didn't he? That was a great
Yes,
great
yeah,
try actually from
there was
Saints.
just a big gap, wasn't there,
Yeah.
for him to get through?
I mean, it was a
But
great try to watch from Saints' point of view, although there was a lot of space for them to exploit, obviously.
yeah, no, I mean, I think during that period, and obviously we'd had Dean Hadley go off in the first minute with an injury.
Yeah, so
Which,
it's just the curse keeps going on, doesn't it? Really, on that regard, and Danny Houghton's concussion looked a nasty one as well, didn't it?
yeah, well, he's been ruled out for Friday. Hadley's been ruled out for Friday, and so is Manu.
Wow,
Um,
wow.
I mean, at the end, Manu came over with the rest of the players, and he had more tape than leg. I think that I'm not convinced that the Massey yellow card was deserved at all.
I think I think it's difficult on that one because they wouldn't have enough time to look at it to be sure of head contact at the time. But it was a late tackle. I think the problem with that is they're inconsistently dealt with the late
Yeah,
tackle situation. Um, if there's a suspicion that he's also caught him high, then that would be when the card is warranted. But I tend to agree with you that I wasn't certain that there was any high. I didn't feel like he took him high as well as late, so penalty should have been sufficient.
and the other thing you've got to remember is Massey isn't a small lad. Do you know what I mean? If he's caught him, then the height difference is going to affect that, isn't it?
Well, there is a bit of that, but you still got to
I
being
know
the
you've
big
got
man. You've
to,
got to be aware of that going into a tackle. I don't see that as a real.
but what I mean is going late. If the referee catches it, then you know. But my big gripe is that the touch judge didn't come on for the incident. It was only when the crowd starts jeering and everything else, and then the referee sort of glances at the big screen. And I just think, you know, certainly the Crusher tackle one, you know, the touch judge was 3 yards away.
The touch judge did get involved in the crusher tackle one. They'd called the crusher tackle before the TV coverage. From my judging of it, watching the TV footage, that's my opinion of it. Yeah, but I do agree the Massimo one seemed a little bit harsh, but it didn't really knock you by that stage because you were used to dealing with men down, used to dealing with no bench and that sort of stuff. And I mean, just after you were back up to 13, Hakim Maludi, great. I mean, how many times have we seen the player he did it to in Tommy Makinson do that to his opposite winger? So to see someone get one back on Tommy Makinson like that was really impressive to see. I certainly think.
Because Maludi isn't a very tall player, so the height he got was phenomenal.
Yeah, and he's a bit niggly, isn't he? But there's a lot of heart in Hakim Maludi. He's definitely going to be a fan's favourite the more game time he gets at
Oh,
LFC.
definitely. We were saying actually on the way back, he's going to be one of those really frustrating players that is like rocks and diamonds, absolutely amazing, wins your matches, but gives away penalties which cost you matches.
Yeah, you're going to love him though. I think that's the way it's going to go with them. That's quite a lot about Hull, and they deserve to get quite a lot of credit for the way they fought in this game, even though they caused themselves much of the mischief they were under, in my opinion. Let's talk a little bit about St Helens because they did play the better rugby for the first 20 minutes or so of the game, even before any Simbinins came into it, and they hung on in those conditions. It couldn't be easy to hang on. It kind of did feel like the momentum was against them. They made some clever decisions. Danny Richardson slotting a field goal over on the hooter sort of thing at the end of the first half, and also they also made some bad decisions when Zeb Taylor dropped the ball for his knock-on, but there was opportunities out wide when they'd made the breaks around that time of the game that probably would have seen it sealed if Saints had scored the first try of that first half. That felt like one of the absolutely crucial moments in the game, didn't it?
Yeah, I think like you were saying about, you know, the Warrington match, them only being 16-0, you know, you can argue Saints really the game should have been out of sight before half-time. Yeah. A team of Saints quality, you know, with their free flowing and spread it to the wings and all the rest of it, and they were 2 men up. You really thought that this was going to be deadly.
Yeah, and again, it was kind of it was maybe more so for them. It was more Johnny Lomax of the sort of skill position players who probably was the more impressive one. I would argue from the Saints side of things. Barber, you managed to keep relatively quiet. Richardson had a few moments, but wasn't consistent throughout the game. I didn't feel. Mark Percival was very threatening. He's such an exciting player when he hits the ball at speed, and he's got everything in his game in terms of an offload, a tackle bust, and the pace. I think he's an absolute class attacking player.
Yeah, totally agree. And to be honest, when they scored their first 2 tries, so in such quick succession, I thought, oh, this is not going to be good.
Yeah. But Regan Gray scored a couple of tries, nice diving finish for one of them, and a sort of nice bit of footwork to find the gap through for his second try. He did do a very Regan Grace thing and catch the ball when stood in touch, when there was more opportunities to take further points later on in the game. But got to credit him on the tries he scored, because one of them did certainly involve plenty of finishing, and it's good to see him finish some tries rather than just walking after what has been put on a plate for him.
Yeah, I was surprised in the. I think maybe it was even when we were down to 12 men in the first half. He had, what looked like a clear run through down the touchline, and he didn't take it.
Yeah, he's got a lot to work on yet, because he could be absolutely anything, couldn't he? With the sort of the guile and the floating running speed and the ability to do the diving finishes and those sorts of things. I just think my reflection of the game coming out of it at the end was how exciting it ended up being, and it was a great advert to be on the BBC. It wasn't a packed house, but you didn't necessarily get the sense of that because the action was so absorbing. So I was really, really impressed by the game and enjoyed the game a lot, particularly the second half. And I thought the whole FC comeback was maybe on, but not quite to be.
No.
In terms of the stats, Saints edged the meters, but by less than 100, and only 0.1 meters per carry better average gain. So there's nothing in that really. They may have done better with the ball. When they had it, if it weren't for a 13-9 error count loss that they put up, so they made a few more errors, did the Saints, and Hull cost themselves though with their discipline. 8-5 the penalty count was against them, and the 3-0 sin bin count. I get the frustration of some penalties get given for my team and not for the other team, and vice versa, and those sorts of things. I get that frustration. I do feel that if that's happening, it's refereeing errors. And one thing that occurred to me over the weekend is, do you think some of this laying down by players is a reaction to referees missing high tackles? Because that's where it seems to be coming in. And most of these instances where people are I don't want to say feigning injury, but acting like they're more hurt than they are. And Tony Gigo was the finest example of it over the weekend. But do you think a lot of that is coming in because players are frustrated that there's a lot of head-high shots that aren't getting picked up? There was one or two in the Wigan game. There was one where Liam Marshall just looked gobsmacked at the fact that he didn't get a high tackle decision given, for example. And maybe that's the way. I don't like the players' reaction to that way, but do you think that's playing a part in it?
I think it must be, because it's frustration, and if as a player you're not going to go the attacking the referee verbally approach, which we've not condoning, but you've seen that also doesn't work. Players want some way of demonstrating what's happened, don't they?
Yeah, so I think then probably there needs to be some sort of consensus figured out. I really wish we had the money, the resources, and the levels of people involved to have 2 referees, because with the pace of the game, I feel like that's a bonus more than a hindrance at this size. But because I think we need to support the referees. We need to give them lots of encouragement and get them. It's not that the standards aren't terrible, I don't feel. It's just nothing's really changed, and the game has changed. And the refs, the full time, but that's just to keep up with the conditioning of the players. But it doesn't mean that it's still not harder to make decisions in a faster paced game, even if you are a little bit fitter than the referees of the past. And what we have now is the trial by video, so we see the referees' mistakes much more blatantly, and that's why we feel standards have gone down. But we need to find some way of helping the referees, and I don't think the best way to help the referees is players staying down and highlighting it. I think maybe
it's got to the point where if a player, it lays down on the floor and doesn't get up, you're quite certain that they'll get the penalty. Whereas if a similar incident happens and they get to their feet, they're unlikely to get the penalty.
What I would like to see happen is if a player goes down with a head tackle, and it is a head tackle, but the referees just missed it because they don't see everything, they should go off for a concussion test, that player.
Yeah.
Free interchange, but...
Yeah, if they're going to feign an injury, get them off, let them be treated for the injury.
Yeah, and that'll discourage that. And then on the byproduct as well, if obviously it is highlighting the things that the referees are missing, and the referees then need to come together with themselves, the match officials as a group, with the touch judges certainly involved too, and start thinking about where was our positioning for that incident, who might have had the best angle, and do we need to start talking to each other more about who has the best angle on headshots, and judging the action and the reaction to the action without the reaction having to be so over the top.
I think also I would like to see less replays within the ground, because I don't think that helps.
It doesn't even matter though sometimes, because the replay can be completely clear about what's happened and fans will still get angry and moan about it. And there was no replays, if I understand it, within the ground on the game on Friday night for the Rhinos versus the Centurions, and the fans certainly didn't give a shit whether the decisions were correct or not. They wanted to bash the ref, which is completely out of line and out of order.
Yeah, no, I just think that the more it gets replayed within the ground, the more irate fans generally get.
Well, fans only get annoyed about what goes against their team as well, which I think we all need to kind of take a bit of responsibility on. I actually quite like that, the whole get on the back of the ref, get them on side, the lying on ref. I actually quite like that, because I think that's a role the fans can play in helping their team win a game. I know that sounds a bit silly, but I like that. I don't like it when it crosses over that line where you accuse the referee of going against you because you interpret every replay to be, well, that was a ball strip because my player was carrying the ball, but that was a knock-on because they were carrying the ball.
Yeah.
As long as the referee's pretty consistent on that, and as long as the referee's consistent on if the neck's a high tackle or if the chin's a high tackle, because sometimes you might get referees giving them for the around the neck. As long as he gives them all around the neck, not bothered, that sort of stuff.
Well, it's like I said last week, Gareth Hewer didn't give an offside all match, I don't think, but he didn't give an offside for either team. So you don't mind?
Yeah, that is true, yeah. Okay, that's a nice bit of rounded ref chat, maybe, from us. I don't know. We're both kind of in support of the refs eventually.
Interesting thing I did hear, sorry, this is about refs as well, but on one of the local radio programmes, a guy was saying about how basically referees are pushed through so much quicker from amateur level now, so they're not having the experience and the exposure of being a touch judge at a local league fixture and having, the players' parents yelling at them and all the rest of it, and then building that up into being a local league referee and having it, and then gradually, the progression through to, Super League. And he was saying about how scarily fast some of these officials are being pushed through, and they're not, they've not sort of learned how to deal with 20 people shouting at them, and suddenly they're dealing with, 8,000 or whatever.
But from what I've heard from referees talking on shows and on TV and read interviews and stuff like that, they tend to actually be more bothered by when you can hear the individual voices rather than when you've got a whole crowd shouting at you, because you can't distinguish anything personal when the whole crowd are just saying.
No, but I guess you get used to everything you do being scrutinised.
Yeah, but there is a question mark over the pushing refs through too fast. We lost a lot of experienced refs, and whether that was,